And so, yeah, those are the type of things I think when it comes to parenting that, and again, I don't feel my parents, they never talk to me about nothing. It's like, do this. If you don't do it, you're getting spanked. Boom. That was
Hmm.
that's it. We don't want to hear
Yeah.
your feelings. We don't care what you have to think about it. Go somewhere. And so for me, it's like, wow, they don't care.
Yeah.
Their way or the highway. I was like, I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna care. I'm gonna show that I care. But it's not gonna be like that. But when you have, I think one of the biggest challenges I feel for parenting is when you have a kid that is defying this, just I don't care what you say. I'm gonna do what I want. That's
Hmm.
hard. That because you're just like, why
Hmm.
are they doing this?
Yeah.
We ain't trying to hurt them. Why they just keep doing what they want to do? You don't have. That's why you stay on your knees because your natural instinct is to get mad and just you don't
Yeah.
want to do that. It's like no, you want to keep their. You don't want to break their spirit, but you want them to know that they have to. There's something they just got to just follow the rules, regardless if they're understanding it or not. If it makes sense or
Hmm.
not, you have to do this. You know.
Yeah.
And so, and I'm not talking about abusing your kids and that kind of stuff where don't tell anybody I'm abuse you and the kids, not that
All
like that.
right.
I'm just saying, as parents, you really want to put your kid in check because kids that don't respect their parents at certain levels are not going to respect anybody else either. I think, and those are the
Hmm.
kids that say stuff to people that the cops pulls them over like, what are you going off on the cops? Like, look,
Yeah.
that man's an authority. He's got a gun. Listen to what he's
Yeah.
saying, because
Yeah. Yeah.
it might save you. That kind of thing. That's what, as a black man, I think about because I know that I was 13 years old one day, and me and a friend of mine were just walking down the street in a neighborhood, going to some girl's house across town, and we're just trying to take a shortcut to a neighborhood, very very wealthy neighborhood,
Hmm.
and this is back in the 70s.
Hmm.
And police roll up on us. We just walk on the sidewalk. What are y'all doing?
Yeah.
Like, we're
Yeah.
just going up. We're walking. No, don't walk in this neighborhood. You don't live over here. You need to go around. We're like, what? We got to go around now? What is? Yeah, you don't
Yeah.
go. Just stay out of this neighborhood. Wow, this white neighborhood, two black guys walking. This is the world we live in. Our kids, they're
Hmm.
not experienced. We're trying to help our kids. Hey, you know that when you go to certain places, you're gonna be profiled. You need to know this. Kids don't have
Hmm.
this understanding yet. So we're trying
Hmm.
to help them avoid some situations that could cause them problems. And so for you, I was like, Michael, your boy, you can't just be walking around neighborhoods. You need to know where you're
Hmm.
going, dress like you're going. You got a purpose. That kind of thing. I tried to make sure that you just don't walk in everybody, especially if you don't live there. So I'm trying to
Hmm.
tell you what I know from my experience, so that you will
Hmm.
be safe. As a young black man walking in certain neighborhoods, and so
Yeah.
you're in the
And that's
South.
this is a good topic for another episode. Is talking about the differences in how we were raised, like generational sort of like experiences, right? Have times changed? In what ways? In which ways have they not? That sort of conversation about
Right.
raising kids. So that's something I want to get to that one on another episode. But I just wanted to. I'm previewing that one for another
Right,
time
right. That would
for
be
sure.
good. But that's what, when you think about parenting, that's what
Hmm.
parents are looking at. My
Yeah.
parents were raised basically on a farm. They were raised doing civil rights. They've seen a lot of stuff that they're just like trying to keep you safe.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they're just like, do what we say. So we're trying to keep you from being out there, and they keep you from certain people and certain places because they don't want to
Hmm.
keep you in church, keep going forward, keep you in school. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to protect your life. And I think parents these days have a different experience. So you
Hmm.
didn't see some stuff I saw coming up. So you're like,
Yeah.
why?
Wow. Yeah.
I
Maybe
don't get
so.
it.
Wow.
I'm like, well, things are changing. For your kids,
Sure.
you're gonna be in a different, maybe a neighborhood that's more uh, culturally diverse, and that they'll
Hmm.
see kids that don't look like them, and they'll raise, and that'd be a nice little community, certain economic standards that they live in. So that's different than the way you were lived, we're raising a more of a blue collar neighborhood, police officers, teachers, pastors, that it's
Hmm.
different. So you look at all those different dynamics and you try to help your kids in terms of parenting them understand your world that they're living in, and how can they
Hmm.
get older, become adults, become responsible. And that's the whole idea. Is you're trying to raise responsible adults. At the end of
Yeah.
the day, you're trying to get
Yeah.
them to get to the point where they can live. A lot of
Yeah.
kids are not making it today.
Yeah.
They didn't get taught. They just think they can go out and do anything they want to do. They're gonna get away with it. But that's not going. You know, what you reap, you will sow. That's a
What
biblical
you sow, you
principle.
will reap. What you
Yeah,
sow, you will reap.
what you sow, you will reap. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So you got to sow good habits into your kids, and that's what I think you're trying to do is discipline your kids to have good habits, eating habits, sleeping habits, study habits, social habits with other people, those kind of things. And they watch you mostly. So I think
Hmm.
disciplining your kids more than anything is you got to live it. Whatever you tell them you're doing, you
Hmm.
got to be an example to them so they can see
Yeah.
it be also, so if you don't use profanity in your home or you tell them not to use profanity, you shouldn't be using it,
Yeah.
yourselves, right? that's
Yeah.
that's basic, that's parenting right there. Just do what you say you're going to do. You should be
Do
fine.
as I do and as I say.
Yes. That's
Sure.
the key. That's the hard part for us as parents. We got to live this stuff in
Yeah.
front of you.
Yeah. 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 That's definitely the challenge because they will start to either call you out or just
Yeah.
notice the disconnect, I don't want to say hypocrisy, but maybe the disconnect. Well, you said this, but then you didn't do this. They'll start to ask, and then sometimes they'll just stop asking and be like, "Man, I don't even care what this person said. They ain't doing what they say, what they say I'm supposed to do." Um, so yeah, that's definitely something to consider. I see we're getting up there on time,
Where did the
so
time go, man? We
I
just
know.
started this.
You know,
God.
what's so interesting, Dad, and I'm gonna belabor the podcast just a little bit longer. When we first did the podcast, I know we were keeping episodes at like 30 minutes, and that was like an important thing for us. Like a little bite size or like something you could easily just listen to in 30 minutes time and that sort of thing. And now you look at podcasts, and sometimes things are like 2 hours long. It's this idea of like the long form podcast where it's sometimes an interview with someone and you're going through a whole thing, an hour and a half, 2 hours, multiple different topics, just having a full conversation. Because oftentimes you see these podcasts, they have multiple people on there. It's like 4 or 5 people talking, and there's nothing you can really do in 30 minutes with 4 people trying to share thoughts about a topic, right? That's just too short. And so sometimes I do think the appetite sometimes for a podcast can be a little bit longer. Sometimes people have longer commutes. Sometimes they just put it on. They're just playing it at different times. It's not like this idea of it's got to be 10, 15 minutes. And that's it. I think certain things probably need to be that way, but certain conversations, people are more interested in hearing the nuance and having a fuller conversation. And so if it goes a little bit longer than maybe 20 minutes, it's okay as long as the conversation is interesting, you find the people on the podcast enjoyable, and you sort of like connect with them. That's okay. Like it's like, hey, sitting around and having a conversation with them, and you don't want the conversation to end. Who wants that conversation to end when you're having a good time with your friends? So while I do try to be conscious of the time and just for our own schedules,
Yes.
sake, and I've got
Yes.
kids that are probably going to run in at some point, like you can't, be on here for 2 hours, but just thinking about, okay, like if it goes longer than 25 minutes or 30 minutes, like that's okay sometimes, as long as the conversation is still engaging. I think that's okay. So I might be more relaxed on our times on these podcast episodes, and just thought I'd throw that out there in case you're concerned. Like, why did we go so long? That's kind of
Well,
what we're doing here.
I think that's a good point. Well taken to your point. But then you can go back, again, edit the parts that need to be edited. I think
I'm not doing that.
you're
No,
not
we're
doing.
gonna keep what's in here. No, that's too much work.
Edit
Too much work.
it.
Too much work. Yeah, like no.
It
And
is
I
what
think
it is. Huh?
yeah, and I think that's kind of because then you have to figure out what part to take out. Like editing, like chunks, like that.
Yeah.
that's way too much work because you got to make it still seem natural unless you're going to really break it up and do it like prompts. I think I've only done that once where I really had to break up someone's, like it was an interview with someone, and I had to break it up because it was more practical. We were recording on something. I think it was an audio interview, and the phone kept dropping, the call kept dropping, and so I broke it up because I couldn't play it straight because it just kept dropping, and so I just made it I would ask a question and then just play their response after it, and that's how I had to edit that one. But I'm not normally going to do that. No, you're just going to play it straight through. Because you want to capture their full, that person's full thoughts. We want to capture our full thoughts and not, oh, I didn't think this part that they said was important. That's rude. Like, I mean, I guess you can do that as an editor. That's your job, but that's not for me to decide. I think everything you say is important, Dad. So how could I edit your words and your thoughts? Like, I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that. So
I understand. Yeah. You the boss.
All right.
You the boss.
Cool. Well, that being said, I think we are going to wrap up this episode. Definitely some things to kind of touch on in future episodes that we've kind of discussed here, but we can get into a fuller conversation at a different time on a particular topic. But just I'll give you the opportunity to share any final thoughts just on discipline, on parenting and raising children, like you said, to sort of be healthy adults. Your final thoughts.
I think as parents, when we come to our kids, it's a very emotional, spiritual decision to discipline your child. Make sure you start prayerfully first. Sit down with your wife, agree to how you're going to do that discipline, and then follow through. Be the example. If you say you're going to do whatever you say, do it. Don't keep changing. Be consistent in what you're saying you're going to do. And I think at the end of the day, just love your kid like God loves us. God gives us opportunities. We mess up. He still loves us. Continue to love them, even though you might hate some of their behavior, and show that love and communicate that love. I think it would be the best part of discipline. If you do discipline, let them know. My parent, I remember my parent spanking me one time and said, I hate to do that. I don't know why. I don't like doing this, but I do this for your good. I'm like, really? This hurts.
Yeah, and you started to do that too. You said that to me. This hurts me more than it hurts you. I truly doubt that. But okay.
Right. Really. Okay. Yeah. But they're just saying, look, I love you, care about you, but this behavior, we're going to have to stop this. And so this is what it comes down to. And I think parents need to have that conversation with their kid at some point if their kids are not paying attention and doing what they want to do. If your kid is like you, Mike, pretty soon 90% of the time they're doing what they're cool. Hey, just love that kid, help them to grow up, set the boundaries, that you'll be fine.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the final thing I would say is when you were saying like expressing, like talking to your children about why you're disciplining. And I think don't be afraid to potentially change what you're doing after having conversations, right? That if you think something's not working or something could be different, right? Like, oh, I always go to this thing, but maybe a different method might work. I think that you should be open to that and having a conversation once your child gets to be a certain age, right? If they're like 2, 3, you're probably not having a conversation about that. But as they begin to grow and develop, think about different ways in which your discipline might change, right? And not just think about doing the same old thing. Because that's just what it was, and that's what I've always done. It's like you might need to change as your child matures. Think about ways that you can express or talk about, these challenges differently as they grow, instead of thinking you have to do the same thing their entire life. And so, yeah, that would be my last thing to kind of to end on. Thank you all for joining us. We appreciate you spending time with us. We hope that you, again, find this content enjoyable, informative, and that hopefully maybe it challenges you or, makes you think about something differently. And, that's our goal. And if that's the case, we encourage you to come back to the next episode. Hope to have some engaging content again. And yeah, I guess with that, we'll end. And with our quote from Arthur Ashe, it's just encouragement to everyone to start where you are, use what you have, do what you can. We'll see you next time.